I am your host with the locks that rocks, Adam Richmond, and this is Surviving Rocklahoma, your official podcast of Rocklahoma and of Born and Raised Country Music Festival. And I am joined with somebody who is going to be making an appearance at that very festival this year. But before he does, he's got some other things he's working on in the immediate future. What is up, Jason Boland?
Hello. Thanks for having me. Everything all
Absolutely.
the time.
Absolutely, man. It's been a couple of years since we've visited with you last. What have you been up to?
Just been out on the road. We just released our 11th studio album, so this one seemed like it was a long time in the making, but just out there doing what we know to do, which is go from town to town and play music for folks.
So you mentioned that this is your 11th album, and we asked you last time a little bit about how you approach going into each albums. And I've had a lot of people that talk about albums as if they're like a chapter in the great book that they're working on. Tell me a little bit about this one.
I think that's the way we are a lot too. I think people that create their music mostly in-house, which means, writing most of your songs or choosing cover songs from people you know or people from inside your friend group, recording them with your friends, with producers at studios the old saying is, you have your whole life to write your first album and then about 16 to 18 months to write every subsequent album. So they do tend to be journals that you document where you are in life and what you're going through. Even if you do cover songs or go grab some of your older songs that haven't been cut, you usually try to find them. I do anyway, something that fits thematically with what you're doing. This one was felt a little bit different because coming out of the album before, The Light Saw Me was a complete concept record, which had its own focus, and it was fun and liberating in that way. It was liberating by its constraints of the focus of the narrative. You knew what you had to do to tell this story. And then this one just felt like it was time to do something a little more autobiographical and down to earth, no pun intended, but it's another snapshot of where we're at right now and what's been going on.
Is I remember when we were diving into it and you were talking about some of the subject matter in your last album, and this one is more autobiograph. I can't even say the word. More
I
about
got
y'all's
you.
selves and your travel. Can you tell me a little bit of the difference in the writing process between the two?
Again, in the Lights on Me, once you come up with the concept and the story, then it's just finding the little narrative tributaries that'll feed into that, and get your overarching narrative of what you wanted to say. So you're looking out for, in ours too, it had some time travel, so we were a little sensitive to like anything that would be like anachronistic or holes in the plot or something. Even, we still got out into metaphor some. It's not just a literal album. I think when a lot of people said it's this album about alien abduction, how's that going to work? It's like, well, we use a lot of metaphor too. And when you get down to that part of the album, it's really not that much. It's
Mhm.
almost like symbolic of when you flip the record is when that all happens. The rest is just about how humans deal with stuff anyway. So um then this one, it's just you you find out what do you want to talk about. I don't This one kind of came to be more about like the process of creating music and playing it out and being in the music business, like Next to Last, Hank Williams, Truest Colors, um, you know, Buffalo Return. It just a lot of how we see ourselves as traveling folk artists. So it just like it was more autobiographical and it was more grounded and like just where we are and what we do. It's a very personal album, so people are into that.
I respect being able to transition your subject matter to something that's a little bit more fantasy driven and more of a concept, and then things that, are near and dear to you. Do you find the transition in that to be a little interesting or a little bit different from what you expected?
It's like staring at a mountain or like a run on a ski hill that you might be skiing. When you look at it in its total picture, it can look huge and but when you're on it, it's not. Anytime you're writing any specific song, you're just right there in that moment, and none of it's that strange or we're we're always, or me personally as a writer, I'm always just trying to service the song. What is this song saying? I'm not trying to think about who's going to hear it, what their reaction is going to be. I'm just trying to see whatever reason I'm going after this little ditty, whether it be a lyrical line, a melodic hook, a musical, something on the guitar. I'm just trying to go with where that's leading me. So at any given moment, it never seems like that big of a transition. You're just trying to write the song you're writing.
It sounds like you write as much for yourself as you do for this career that you've uh, built for yourself over the years.
Yeah, there's still a greater respect for just music in general. Like I just want to put out a song that's special for whatever reason. And if people resonate with it, that's great. But to just be a part of human poetry or the message that we're trying to say. So it's really just trying to be true to that. I know that sounds kind of hokey and corny and whatever, but that's the songwriters that I looked up to when I first started hanging around places like the farm in Stillwater and looking at the way Mike McClure wrote songs and Bob Childers wrote songs. They it was just for the sake of writing this piece of something. And yeah, it's wonderful when you do it right. It is really gratifying. It feels good because you think you've you know sizzled something on the wall of existence that somehow is going to stick around. So that's why a lot of guys that I know and everybody takes it really seriously, and they don't just want to write the next pop hit. And it's weird because it wasn't this big of a scene, and it was an underground movement, but the world's gotten so big that even the underground's gotten really big now. So people really need to make sure that that they're servicing the song and going to put something behind that they're going to be proud of. So that's what I try to do.
You know, something I've noticed in a lot of the festivals you've played in the red dirt subgenre, if you will. You had mentioned a couple of times about picking covers and doing covers and stuff. Uh, Tell me a little bit about selecting your covers and how your peers feel about whenever they see you cover theirs or ask them to be a part of it.
Well, as a songwriter, um, I think I can speak for all of them. There's there's really nothing more flattering, I think, than somebody wanting to cover one of your songs, no matter what. I mean, there's certain rules that you probably shouldn't break, like, hey, you just released this single, now we're going to do it too, maybe. But uh, you select them because they move you too, just the way that you want your songs to move people. So on this album, we did Drive, which is by Jason Eady, Jamie Lynn Wilson, and Kelly McKeewee. So two of the Trishas and Jason. And we thought we found a nice take on what that song says, and we didn't do it exactly one way or the other. We kind of got our own little sludgy version of it, and it fit the overarching theme of what we felt this album was going to be. We've always tried to do songs, like I said, from our in group and people that we look up to and inspire us, which usually meant being like Bob Childers and Randy Crouch, Greg Jacobs, and Billy Joe Shaver. And this time we did a Jimmy LaFave too. So I just woke up one morning singing that song, Buffalo Return to the Plains. So it wouldn't leave my mind, and I felt like I was receiving some form of inspiration to cut that tune. And then uh, I like I like it when country bands throw in a rocker. And since I don't write a lot of rock and roll, that's always a good, reason to pick a cover. And one of my favorite rockers and one of the band's favorite rockers is Randy Crouch. So we did Ain't No Justice on this album, busted out some slide guitar, and that's the three on this album. I'm sure there's a couple of different reasons for others, but usually it's just what you think the album needs. And I like not trying to just write every song and being this, that it almost takes it to the point of being this super control freak even over what songs come out for us, so it it lets me still be a fan of other people's music and songwriting and be a part of it. So it's just it if it feels right, that's what we usually end up doing.
I love it. And you named quite a few names, and as somebody who's more of a rocker, but I still love to give in to my country roots and Southern soul. I've always seen like the red dirt scene as a bit of an underground in itself. What do you think?
Yeah, and even with people from throughout history of what we would define as red dirt music, they had a lot of commercial success, but still in a way just this a little bit of going against the grain. You know, I like to I like to look at four pillars of red dirt to me in a way of being Woody Guthrie. I think a lot of people agree on that. Bob Wills, and you know, that's the influence he's had over the whole music genre coming from Oklahoma is huge. And Wanda Jackson, a lot of people don't think of rockabilly and that style of music as being what it would be, but there's a lot of influence of that. And then Leon Russell. Those are the four that if I had to point at, and all of those were hugely successful in their times, but even now looking back, it's almost like they're in a historical underground because of people. As it's all progressed, people just become more and more obsessed with novelty and don't really look back on stuff. They're just, what's the next pop song? And sometimes it's like the the inmates are running the asylum
Sure.
sometimes. But
Bouncing from earworm to earworm.
yeah, yeah. So that goes back to people that are wanting to make craft, boutique, in-house stuff. And we were at this flashpoint where technology caught up with people's desire to put out music, and that went to studios. Suddenly had everybody had a recording studio in their house, and you could put anything on the internet and everybody could access it really fast. So that was the spark that turned everybody on to this wider underground. You didn't have to be some person that lived at a record store and collected the imports and found all these things. You could now find a way to access it. And we were there at that flashpoint. It happened all around the world, but in Stillwater, it was a moment where some people were getting fed up with top 40 country and where it was headed, and they just wanted something different. So it it the subgenre of red dirt is super diverse. When you hear any of the bands that you want to name, like that are going to be on The Boys from Oklahoma, or that are going to be at Born and Raised, they're they're really diverse. They're not one sound at all, but they all come from the same place, and they all come from the same spirit of wanting to do something original and create uh, its own scene and its own legacy.
That's awesome. And I love that outlook on it. Now, you also mentioned the Boys from Up and Coming Boys from Oklahoma show. Tell me, with a catalog as diverse as yours, and I mean, over 11 years, what goes into building your set list for the night?
I just did it. They've been wanting to um, get it for the sign language interpreter, and they wanted to get the sets early. So I sit down, and I think our sets are 30 minutes. So yeah, what do you do? So I wrote out four different nights, and then I also sent them a sing along set. So I don't know if we're just going to wind up going out there and doing the same sing along set every night. But that's what the people want to hear at that moment. Yeah, make no bones about it. Everybody is going to be there, or I think should be, to see the reunion across Canadian ragweed. Because when I talk about that flashpoint too, you're talking about one of the tips of the spear of when people were able to say, no, I like this music and I'm going to go choose this. And they were able to with a band like Cross Canadian Ragweed that New York, LA, or Nashville wouldn't have really known what to do with a band like Ragweed. It had to come from a roots area like this, and they were they were a phenomenon. So I'm just excited to see them back on stage together, and I think that's the catalyst for how blown up this thing got, is just to see Cross Canadian Ragweed, and then the fact that you get to see the people that inspired Ragweed and us, the Great Divide, and then Stony, and then get to see other people that were inspired by it, like the Turnpike Troubadours. I just think that it's going to be a really cool thing. I'm glad it finally happened. I'd had my fingers crossed a long time that they would they would do the reunion thing.
It as a local and a fellow local, we all know how of, of a big a deal this is. And when that announcement went out, the amount of excitement that everyone showed, how and my understanding that it's sold out. What did y'all? How did you all feel about that news when that news broke?
I, I just thought, yeah, exactly. I thought that's the way it should have happened. I hope Cross Canadian Ragweed feels vindicated in it. Like, yeah, people remember what they meant to this scene and what they meant to roots music in general throughout that time of people being so fed up with what was going on in most forms of whatever you want to call top 40 or popular music. It was just it's always been a little more bubblegum, you know. It's I'm sure there were jazz players back through the development of jazz that looked at newer jazz and went, "Oh, that's terrible," but they were all amazing, you know. Everything about a scene that's based off of musical prowess or songwriting or just the need to put out some form of a folk narrative out there. Why would you even do it? Once it just became about being successful, you know, I think everything suffers from that, whether you're talking about food, sports, music, anything that's an expression. So to see to see this come together like it is, and to see the people remember, they're like, oh yeah, Ragweed was something special. I think all these bands that are on there were something special, and it's because they came from their heart and they came from a good place on why they should even be out there doing it.
That's awesome, man. Now, there's a lot of places an event like this could be held. There's a lot of festival grounds. I mean,
Hmm.
there's stadiums, but whenever you find out that it's going to be in Stillwater, tell me a little bit about playing that venue.
I mean, it didn't have to be, but it had to be. You know, yeah, I'm glad they did it because Bob Childers would always say he didn't even know what it was about Stillwater. I think he referred to it as like a fountain or a spring or a well. He said it's one of those places where energy gathers for some reason, and the energy that it gathers was I still say first and foremost it was songwriters. The performances and performance is its own form of a production of a song as it's being played. You know, do you have guitars? Do you have fiddles? Do you have whatever? But it really went back to songwriting, which means do you have something to say? And are you going to say something original from you? And the big secret that they taught you that was just do something personal, do something that's meaningful to you, and it'll be original by definition. We're all different people. So if you look within you and write from your heart and perform them from your heart, they're gonna be what they need to be. And Stillwater was the home of that. So I'm excited that it's back there.
You know, before we move on to the next event, I have to take a side note because you mentioned something that is going to be featured at this at the Boys from Oklahoma show that I didn't know about, but it's near and dear to my heart. As my followers know, I lost my hearing a few years ago, and I'm actually deaf, and I'm conducting this interview through the assistance of technology. Can you tell me what I see performers get so excited sometimes when they see the ASL performers beside them on the
Mhm.
stage. What is that like when you look over and you see those?
It's special because you want everybody to be included in this for all reasons. You don't want anybody to have to miss out on what's going on. We're all just out there expressing what we can express in this limited time we have on Earth. So it's just it feels great that people are going any extra steps to make everybody included in this, that nobody has to miss out on it for any reason.
Absolutely. And I tell you, one of my favorite things about having this podcast is whenever I lost my hearing and I began to experience music differently and through vibrations mostly. One
Hmm.
of my favorite parts of being able to continue doing this is even though I can't experience the music the same, I get to meet the storytellers and the people who are actually making the music and where the music is coming from. So I'm extremely blessed to have this opportunity to be joined by none other than Jason Boland of Jason Boland and the Stragglers, who was talking about his event coming up that he's a part of and the boys from Oklahoma. Now, Jason, I understand there's another event coming on up this fall, a couple of weeks after Labor Day, known as Born and Raised.
Yeah, yeah, that's a big one, man. That is like the Oklahoma country Woodstock. It's they put on quite a show out there. It's always a fun to be a part of. A little more diverse acts, throughout the wider range of the genre of folk, country, roots rock. It's a big one. It's a juggernaut.
You know, I've been covering these festivals for a while, and I cannot um, accurately describe the difference between the rock scene and the country fans. I mean, they are so similar, but they're so different. But one thing that I have noticed that is the same is the spirit of music and such, especially back in the backstage where the artists intermingle and they start working on some other things down there. I know a couple of our artists have impromptu performances and such like that. Can you tell me a little bit about being an artist amongst other artists at a festival such as that?
Yeah, that's what we always say. I was just texting with McClure. We just can't wait to catch up. I think a lot of us first and foremost are friends, and we just want to still be able to sit down and talk. And what that usually ends up doing is being, what are you working on? And somebody will start picking around on a tune or playing one of their new ones, which inspires you in some way, or you might help them with it. And and then just remembering the good times. Everybody wants to play the old songs together again. So s- sit around and do some acoustic versions of some of the people that inspired us to do what we do in the first place. It's just it's really all about music and our shared bond over that. So it's great to be able to catch up with your friends. Like at Boys from Oklahoma, what'll be cool about it is a lot of us will get to sit there for 4 days that we even when you get to catch up sometime at those festivals, it's brief, but this ought to provide us. I was just McClure said he's gonna bust out some lawn chairs and we'll have us a extended visit.
I love it. And speaking of brief, I wish we had more time to have this continue this conversation. I feel like I could pick your brain all day. Before I let you go, I like to, with a couple minutes that I have, I like to have all of my guests take a moment to just look at the camera and directly acknowledge their fans and anybody that they've got anything to say to. Jason, the stage is yours.
I've said a lot of times, we always talk about the music and Stillwater and how things come together at a certain time for a certain reason, but it really sunk in on me a few years back, and I've said it a bunch of times. None of this would have gone the way it did if it wasn't for the fans. There was a moment where several of us were just paying our rent and getting by as we could and starting off bands, and we would have three acoustic shows, sometimes more, just in Stillwater or the surrounding areas. There was no radius clause or anything like that. The bars didn't care because they knew that if they booked these acts that people wanted to see, because you couldn't hear this song that this person just wrote unless you went and saw them. There wasn't anywhere to listen to it. That people would show up every night, and the fans that showed up night after night and gave us the fuel to keep doing what we were doing as far as taking it into a market. I'm not saying nobody would we still would have written songs and we would have sit around and played them. But for it to become what it did, and look at the boys from Oklahoma, four sold out nights, in the arena. So to the fans, this is because of how fervent y'all's passion was for everything that everybody in this scene did. And it would not be possible without them.
I love it. Thank you so much, Jason, for joining me and taking time while I see you're on tour. So we are so glad to visit with you ahead of your performance this performance at the Boys of Oklahoma taking place in Stillwater, and I can't wait to catch up with you at Born and Raised Country Music Festival.
Yeah.
This
Well,
so with
set another one of these up and we'll chat again.
Absolutely, you got it. With that being said, folks, for Jason Boland, I'm Adam Richmond. This is Surviving Rocklahoma. Until next time, stay on the positive side of life, and as always, rock on.